Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. My name is Ben Jackson and I'm back to host this one. As always, I'm joined by Scott and Joris. Guys, how you doing this evening?
The Trident is back together. Tried and tested. Hello everyone.
Yeah, definitely. There might even be more people around. Our excuses for that, but we'll see. It's not in our hands. But glad to be with all three of us anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. There may be a couple of people making noise in the background for me. Anyone who's a first-time parent will know the joys of sleep training that we've decided to do this week, which involves a lot of screaming, a lot of tears, mainly from my wife rather than from the baby, but it is what it is. But maybe he's kind of channeling a couple of people that lost their jobs this week. Maybe he's quite upset about a couple of results. I don't know where his allegiances lie. Reading lost, so yeah, maybe it's that as well. But yeah, we'll get into all that. Apart from the Reading defeat, we don't need to talk about that, but we'll get into all the other ones as well. Let's quickly go through the results from this week then. Friday night, Gent drew 1-1 with Charleroi. That was the end of Ranken, which we will talk about in a little bit. Circular, they continue their fine form under Ferdinand Feldhofer. They beat Dender 1-0 away from home. Mechelen, they lost at home 2-1 to leaders Genk. Club Brugge had a bit of a thriller against Beerschot, I guess we could say. Well, it ended up being a thriller by the end. That one finished 4-2 to the defending champs. Anderlecht, a returning man and a new man, scored for them to make it a 2-0 win over Kortrijk. Union beat Leuven 1-0. Standard beat St. Truden 2-1. Antwerp left it incredibly late to beat Westerlo by 3-2. Let's start with that Gent Charleroi game, and I guess we may as well just talk about kind of not the elephant in the room, because it's pretty obvious what we're going to talk about with Ranken being sacked, and kind of how much blame do we attribute to him for what's happened? How much blame do we attribute to the transfer business, which, let's face it, hasn't been great, hasn't really paid off. I don't know about you guys, but I saw Gudjonsson starting and I was like, well, they're going to struggle. I just don't think he is the striker they thought he was going to be at all. And obviously, Ranken has talked about some guys that he wants. It looks like they're going in a different direction there anyway to what he wants. So it's all kind of a little bit, the disjointed nature of that kind of relationship appears to have kind of cost him his job. But the results on the pitch weren't great. The performances haven't been great, but they haven't really been great for a while now. So I feel like it goes beyond Ranken, but unfortunately for him, I think that's the end of his kind of time at a top club for now. He needs to kind of go to a mid-tier kind of team and rebuild. But Scott, yeah, interested to hear kind of your thoughts on what's happened there and kind of the Buffaloes. And then obviously we will talk about Charleroi as well, but it's kind of Gent are the big story from this.
Well, I think it's a case of not so much the elephant in the room in your preamble there, and probably more appropriate to say the buffalo in the room, or the buffalo not in the room anymore. I know that's bad, but I'll just put that out there. You know, it was laid on a plate to me. It was begging for it. But yeah, on a serious note, in terms of the performance this weekend, and Ranken wasn't actually there. He was apparently ill. Which kind of, you know, made the whole last 24 hours or so even more ironic. Yeah, extremely poor. That first half, they were absolutely awful to such an extent they actually got booed off the pitch by their own supporters at half-time. Charleroi, if they'd been a little bit more composed and a little bit more efficient, could have easily been 2 or 3 up by half-time. And I think the thing, just bringing it back to Ranken for a second, is we've been talking for ages, weeks now, about things having to improve, but there has been a sense over the majority of the season that there's just been no consistency there, and we've reached a point now where, you know, enough we've seen enough to know that, you know, that there is no consistency coming under this manager, and that's been a bit of a problem. Fundamentally, that squad of players haven't responded to Ranken for whatever reason. And I think it's a bit of shock and awe tactics. I think there have been internal disagreements as well. We know that they don't necessarily see eye to eye on the big ongoing issue of who's the new striker going to be post Max Dean as well. It's looking highly likely to be a certain Dante Vanzier, who's no stranger to us, of course, who looks to be on his way back, although they haven't reached an agreement yet. And And yeah, Gent lucky to kind of get a point, but yeah, they needed to do something urgently, and this surgery is part of that plan. They've been communicating very publicly about that today. Sam Barrow's been out in front of the media, explaining some of the thinking behind that. When you look at Rankin, I mean, Ben was talking about perhaps it's time to take a step back from, and I'm going to use the phrase in inverted commas, a bigger club. When Rankin left Mechelen, he took a very definite decision. I want to take a step up somewhere, not necessarily in Belgium, to develop me and my career. And he did that. He went to Genk, had sort of 20 months there. And kind of did okay for a while, 94 games, winning 47 of them, went within a whisker of winning a title. We have to underline that, to be fair to him. How this conversation probably wouldn't have been happening now if that had happened, of course, such as the sliding doors moments you get in football. But that didn't end particularly well. Again, internal disagreements over kind of long-term plans, I suppose. He then chooses to leave, goes to Gent, another bigger club in inverted commas. 6 months, just over 6 months, 36 games, winning 17 of them. And I think it's just unfortunate. He's had 2 experiences at larger clubs now, where the expectations are very different. And it will reflect negatively on him for a while, although I don't think it should. He is a good coach. He really is. He plays a good brand of football. He's pretty good with working with young players for the most part. He will come into favour again. If you look at his overall record, actually, and this is what kind of proves to me that he is fundamentally a good coach despite these 2 bruising experiences. If you look at his time at Mechelen and Lommel as well, he's coached 286 games and he's won half of them. There are not many coaches anywhere who can, go, look at my figures. So it's just, it's a couple of bad experiences which will definitely make him a better coach. And I'm sure he'll choose his next offer wisely off the back of this. But I'm not that surprised it's happened. I don't know about you, Joris.
I have to say, if we would have recorded this podcast yesterday, my notes would still be correct, because I actually had Franken unhappy and something rotten in the state of Ghent. That last part is kind of true, I guess, still, regardless of the events. But okay, Franken unhappy, yes, but it's not relevant anymore, I suppose, at this point. Also, I have to get it factually straight, at least PR factually straight. It was by mutual consent, so he was not officially sacked. As was probably the plan at Genk actually before. So we all know it kinda is sacking anyways in a practical way. But just to have that out as well. Went downhill really fast now for him, of course, after missing that title indeed. And at that time it was more like he didn't want to go to a foreign country yet as well, club, because of waiting for one of his children going to higher education first, I believe. And now it looks like also that in his private life might have now backfired a little bit, because the offers, if there are any offers from foreign clubs, they will also definitely be from lesser known foreign clubs, or a lesser of a lesser stature for sure. It's not a complete surprise that he goes. Maybe a surprise that he's, for me at least, that is the timing. On the other hand, he had been more or less openly fighting about these transfers as well in this transfer window. So okay, that was a sign that it might happen sooner rather than later, if nothing changed. And Barro also mentioned specifically in this press conference the loss against Larne as well, which was unacceptable. Of course, everyone agreed on that, so that there was no sticking point there. But nonetheless, okay, that these performances can't happen. Against Charleroi again as well, they looked very unstable defensively as well. now looking at the rest of the games of the streak, it's also 2 points out of the last 3 games. They had a record low audience last weekend as well because of the previous results already, and those people that were there indeed, as you guys mentioned, were not happy at halftime, for example. Yeah, something rotten there. And I also found it interesting, but also strange how so Arnar Vidarsson, the sportive director, also took the words at a press conference earlier today, and he specifically mentioned, so yes, they're hoping to sign one unnamed striker, for like a young unnamed striker, less relevant in this part most likely, but for the under 23 squad, but also Dante van Zer and Juan Cruz from Dulagorets. But he literally publicly named them, and he said, like, I hope we can close all of those. And then he also added, of course, like, well, I'm not sure if I should be saying this at the moment, and maybe it's a bit optimistic to say that we can close all of them, but it's a very public way, I guess. Like, you usually, I don't like to talk about like rumors based on nothing, but I guess here it's a bit more than that already, clearly. So yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, and on Franke further, yeah, indeed, like. I see a few potential clubs inside Belgium where we might end up a bit in a few weeks' time, but I won't mention them yet, just out of respect for for people that are still there. But if things don't go better at those clubs that I'm thinking about, and on Charleroi, I guess they, specifically on the game, then they just didn't take enough of their chances. They kind of should have won this game. I think it's not the first time I said this, but like, again, a summary of their season a little bit like that, and with that also missing the chance to get closer to Gent and the top 6 as well. But they're not completely out of the race, but this would have been a good one to get the 3 points and close a gap and then get closer to the top 6 in the Champions playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely, which would be a pretty good achievement considering they can't score any goals. They can't convert any of their chances, to be fair. I have nothing more to add. You guys have expertly summed up the situation at Ghent and everything that's happened there. So let's move on to a side that made that managerial switch a couple of weeks ago. It's paying off. I think we got to admit it is definitely paying off. They're not necessarily like flying, but they're grinding out some really, really important wins against sides that they do just need to beat. And that's Cercle Bruges obviously beating Dender. Haven't lost the game since 4th of December. Won 1, 2, 3, 4 games in that time, but only in the league they only win by 1 goal. So maybe the old kind of 1-0 to the Cercle should be kind of the saying there. But it's just important to get these points. I think at this point it's kind of we don't really care about performances or anything like that. It's just to get these wins, keep yourself safe, and they've now opened up a gap of 4 points to that bottom 4, and I have to say it's going pretty well. Can't really complain about that. For Dender, I mean, again, for them, they probably saw this as a game they probably would like to have won, but they're still having a decent season. They've still got a reasonable gap to that bottom 4, and that bottom 4 doesn't look like they're going to be going on any runs at any point soon. I think when we looked at it, didn't we, guys? We always saw Cercle as kind of a side that could put together kind of a run like this. They had kind of the players and the mentality and the squad togetherness to be able to do it, and they've clearly done it, whereas the other 4 teams we'll talk about in a little bit don't seem to have that in them. But yeah, another good win for Cercle. They've got Charleroi coming up next. Dender have Standard Liège, a game that again they'll probably look at. I think we could get a win out of that, and then suddenly they're in with a shout at the top 6. So it's still ridiculously tight at the moment. But for Cercle to have opened a 4-point gap, considering where they were when Feldhofer took over, like, you have to say top marks to him.
Yep, Cercle unbeaten in 7 since Feldhofer's come in, and he definitely has had a positive start. I'm glad Ben mentioned 1-0 to the Cercle becoming a thing, because in my notes for this week in relation to Cercle, I have put an asterisk beside still need to score more. Winning 1-0, you'll absolutely take the points, but at 1-0 in games, is it's always pretty precarious, especially in a league as competitive as this. But yeah, I think the details are all important, and sometimes the coaching change, which everyone was a bit sceptical of, including us, for obvious reasons, appears at the moment to have worked out for them. Sometimes just that just a change in personality for whatever reason, with a predominantly, new group of players, a lot of new faces in there, since the start of the season is the thing that can make the difference. And they're out of the drop zone, which psychologically is a huge thing in itself. The continuity post Muslic is there as well. I mean, we know that Feldhofer plays a very similar style. He comes from the same school of tactical thought as well. You've got the aggressive pressing and the forward pressure. He's putting his own tweaks on that system. I mean, Thibaut Summers was talking about that post-match this weekend. He said, actually from our point of view, the players' point of view, we're doing the same things, just in a very slightly different way, which is interesting. But it appears to have working for them, and they've got that initial response. This game actually was, I thought, quite a good watch, all things considered. It was a really dogged physical battle, which I think we all knew it was going to be coming into it. In many respects, not really pretty on the eye, but interesting. You might put it like that. For Belgian football, as people will know, or those who watch regularly, lots of transitions in the play, lots of physical duels. This game was, a really good example of that. It was, at times a bit brutal and pretty ugly, and yeah, a good example of Belgian football kind of at the top end of what it offers on the pitch. Circle flagged up, or Feldhofer did, pre-match, that this game was going to be exactly like that. He said, we're expecting a really tough game. Dender are going to be really compact, which they always are at home. Dender are definitely a better side away from home. There's something psychologically about being freed up and not being expected to perhaps take the initiative as the away side, that frees them up. A lot of their best performances have been away from home, and we know they've picked up slightly more points away from home as well, which kind of backs that up. So they're slightly less comfortable at home. Circle managed to wear them down in the end, and did deserve this victory, I think.
Yeah, of course, in this case, there was a good excuse getting a red card after only 9 minutes in such... Yeah, I anyway had noted down, is it the correct red card? I'm not completely convinced, and especially in such a physical game. Okay, I guess it shouldn't play a role, but then most likely there should have been more cards as well if you go that route. There's two roads you could go as a referee. But yeah, that's that was just a remark. I'm not sure, and of course that kills the game for Dender as well, and makes him even more behind, playing behind, keeping behind the ball and keeping the spaces tight as much as possible. But it's also been a while since I've seen an individual free kick, an indirect free kick given for a back pass. That happened in this game as well. That was even before the red card, I believe. So the opening 10 minutes gave us a few things for sure. And then a little bit of a few big games where they don't pick up much points, but nothing dramatic yet. Well, the thing with them is I can't completely rule them out as completely out of the danger yet, because they play quite a few of the teams at the bottom still. On the other hand, they have their fate in their own hands, and they're in the best position in all of these games, most likely, but when they come. So they have a bit more wiggle room as well. And we've seen I personally don't think they should have issues, but yeah, the underlying stats of them are not necessarily the best either. So they should not slide off. That's the message, I guess. There are a few important weeks for them to come in these last 8 weeks of the regular season. And Cercle, now really climbing out of the mud. Like Ben mentioned, the typical scoreline for them lately as well is just a 0-1. And then often playing sober. Maybe, I guess that's probably what happened here, the dynamic of the squad. And Veldhofer is not the same person as Muslic, in the sense of, and I don't mean anything bad with that necessarily, but he's less charismatic and less eloquent. Nice to struggle on that word myself as well. But that's the irony of everything. But definitely. But it's all a bit more sober and maybe a bit more relaxed, I suppose, in the atmosphere, and just that might have made a difference so far, and might have made it a good decision in the end. What is it now? 1.5 months ago to part ways with Muslic, for both sides. Probably, I think the story in the end panned out differently, and well, it was interesting to see. Okay, and I know I said last week to maybe not highlight these things too much anyway, but here I come as well. But to see even Cercle Brugge fans, with some pyro in the away end, okay, just to mention, because I figured I would not have that much to add actually anymore on them, but Cercle did a good job and won an important game and are on the right track.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of pyros, one side whose pyros are definitely kind of going out and kind of disintegrating and just kind of disappearing altogether is Mechelen. They're only 4 points off the bottom four now. Like, they are dropping like a stone. I think every week we're seeing Hazy kind of chop and change, mix it all up to try and get the best out of what he's got. And I don't know, I feel like the pressure's going to start ramping up a little bit more on him as players are starting to come back from injury, and the transfer window, they've brought some players in and stuff. And he can definitely complain about the summer window. I think we all admitted that some of those signings were just bringing all these injury-prone players in probably wasn't the best idea. That I don't see... Like, obviously, losing to Genk's not a bad thing, but I'm sure lots of fans were dismayed. I'm sure, Scott, you were one of these, to see Lauerbach come on in the 74th minute instead of Van Raffelgem. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like you've got this new signing. Yes, he's probably not been there for long enough, but you just chuck him on to kind of get the fans going and stuff like that. You never know what's going to happen. Good to see Bill Antonio back. His first appearance, I think, since April 24, maybe even March 24. Like, it's been a long time for Bill, and he was one of those players at the back end of last season who was really exciting, really fun to watch, and was kind of don't really want to overdo it, but kind of one of the catalysts of that run that they went on was his emergence as a kind of this really exciting, tricky winger. So nice to see him get like 20 odd minutes in the game and stuff. But Hazy, he's definitely coming under pressure, and it's not just this result, this loss to Genk, because it's understandable losing to a Genk side that are doing so well, but it's kind of the rest of the performances coming in. So Scott loses the Belgian football podcast derby, goes to Joris on this occasion, but there's a lot more kind of to speak about. And Scott, obviously I'll let you go first, because I'm sure you want to talk about Mechelen. And one man, Jeffrey Herman's playing, who I don't think I'd ever expect to see Jeffrey Hermans involved in a transfer rumour with another Pro League club at the age of 33, but here we go. Vessler apparently interested, and he said absolutely not, which I think is quite hilarious. So we'll get to Vessler later, because Joris made a discovery that is quite depressing for me and him, but we're a couple of years away from potentially being signed by Vessler, so we'll see what happens there. Keep an eye on that one, guys. But Scott, Hazy, Mechelen, Franken, I mean, it's all going to start popping off, isn't it?
Well, Rob Scoofs, Mechelen's captain, said after this game, and I think his comment kind of sums all of this up very nicely. He says, we're simply not the team we were a few months ago. So he wasn't mucking about really when addressing this, as all good captains shouldn't. And that underlines all of it. I mean, winless in 7 now. We were saying last week when they were winless in 6, marginally better situation, that it was Hazy's longest streak without winning a game. It's got a bit worse. Ben's right, he's definitely under pressure. They're just not playing well at the moment. To be fair, they started strongly this weekend and then just completely fell out of the game, I think. That's the story of it for them. Genk, who I'll let Joris talk in more detail about, basically killed Mechelen on transitions in the game. That's the story of the game from a narrative point of view for me. Mechelen just left, and Hazy addressed this directly. He said, look, we just left too much space. Particularly the defence didn't squeeze the space. You know what I mean? You lose the transitions, and Genk really capitalised on that. And any side with the offensive capabilities and pace that they've got in creative areas are always going to chomp up opportunities like that. And we saw goals that, from Hazi's perspective, were hugely frustrating. He was flinging some stuff around on the touchline because, you could see very clearly what was going on there. They weren't able to address it at half time either, which was interesting. Arguably, it got a little bit worse for them even in the second half, although, the heat had kind of gone out of the game by that point. The first half was very good, actually. A very, very good watch, really good game of football up to that point. Quite a lot of pretty decent quality. Perhaps not if you're a coach tearing your hair out with individual mistakes that probably shouldn't happen, but in terms of players capitalising on that and taking their moments, lots of lessons for both sides. In this one. Just before I hand over to Joris to give us a bit of a debrief on his side, I really liked Fink's comments after the match where he was talking about the number of changes that he'd made and has been making recently, when he said, we don't really have a bench. Everybody, everybody's on the same level to me, which I really like, actually. It was a really good way of addressing or not even discussing rotation, which of course most people see it that way, but utilising the squad thoroughly and asking players to step up and take their opportunity, which definitely they've been doing. Really, they've been finding solutions to moments of adversity to keep them ahead of club, which Joris will be delighted about.
Yeah, definitely. And also, finally, that curse is broken. So that's 13 games unbeaten from Genk against Mechelen. But at the same time, also their first away victory since 2014. So more than a decade, I've been waiting for this moment. Okay, in the league, that is. I think there was one cup. I think it actually was on penalties, so technically maybe not even a win in the regular time, but that where Genk went through a cup tie a few years back already as well. Anyways, but yeah, very glad that that's broken, that streak. Very, very young squads this weekend because of all the rotation as well. Among others, the first start for O as well. And well, ironically, then against his former teammate Welsh as well, of course. Even though I don't know if they featured much, anyways. And at the same time, specifically, even less. I'm sure at Celtic, but yeah. But yeah, less than 22 years on average on the pitch. So that could be a complete young Genk squad, which is struggling itself. We'll touch on that later on in the episode, I'm sure. But yeah, only thing I can be a little bit unhappy about, I guess, is the efficiency. They should have killed this game off a lot earlier. After these first 10 minutes, the explanation was of Hazi that like Mechelen were playing that well. They were supposed to have a middle block, but they were playing that well in these first minutes. They kind of overcommitted, so they went a bit higher on the pitch, which left spaces. Then you should not give spaces to Genk, to some of the Genk players, obviously, that know how their way with it, and that has shown as well in this game. Only capitalizing twice, but could have been a lot more actually. And for Mechelen, like we both already mentioned, a good start, I guess, but no continuation at all afterwards. A bit worrying, I guess, for them, for like the second round of fixtures. Only Kortrijk have taken less points. Of course, we know they're on a bad streak, but that's showing that even more, I suppose. And with the little asterisks that maybe they indeed should start worrying a little bit as well if they can't turn the tides fast enough.
Yeah, no, good analysis from both of you guys, as per usual. Obviously, the team hot on Genk's tail are Club Brugge at the moment. They hosted bottom of the league Beerschot. Was there going to be an upset? No, there wasn't. Club obviously raced into a 3-0 lead within the 77th minute. Game done and dusted, surely everyone thought. And then suddenly it was 3-2 out of nowhere. And the guys that scored, you would probably not have put any money on. And if you did, you'd probably get banned from gambling. Ayuba Kasai, the Liberian striker, scored his first goal since, when was his last goal? I mean, he only scored 3 in the second division last year, so it is a long time ago. He scored his first goal of the season for the club, and then defender Veyman scored, I believe it was. Yeah, the Burundian defender Marco Veyman scored. So that was 3-2 at the time, and then Nielsen killed off any fun that we could have had with a complete collapse at the Jan Vidal. Potentially, I guess club were looking ahead to the Juventus game, which is about to kick off in about 10 minutes. Who knows? But I guess it kind of sums Bielsa up a little bit recently, doesn't it? They're kind of close, but they just can never really get what they need out of games. Like they'll be close to a point and they'll drop off and not be able to get it, or they'll be close to when they drop off and not able to get it. And that's why they're now 12 points from safety, 10 points behind Veselo. They are 9 points off 14th spot, which I think is the most realistic kind of, if they have any hope of survival, is to finish 14th and contest that playoff game. But that seems incredibly unlikely, and it feels very much like it did a couple of seasons ago for them, doesn't it? Where they were pretty much down by this point in the year, and we were just kind of waiting for it to be confirmed. Whereas for club, I guess, if it just ended 3-0, you'd be like, there's not really much to talk about here. We can just kind of move on to the Juventus game. But when you let it go to 3-2, everyone's going to be like, oh, is there a couple of issues there? 4-2 looks a little bit better, but yeah, I guess they'll just be like, oh, well, we switched off and we switched back on just in time. But 6 goals, can't really complain in a game like that.
Yeah, well, while we're on the subject of Beershot, for those of you who listen to us who are based in the UK, there was a weird moment this week on television in the UK. There's a very popular show here called Dragon's Den, which has been franchised all around the world, where entrepreneurs pitch business ideas. And there's a guy who came on Dragon's Den in the UK this week who was pitching a football shirt business, basically a subscription model where you pay a certain amount a month, and every month you get a mystery shirt. So he does his pitch, and then each of the Dragons individually got a mystery box. Peter Jones opens up his box, and what's inside Peter Jones's box? He goes, oh, I like this. This is purple. And he holds up this shirt. And I'm like, that's a Beershot shirt. Probably just a weird moment of the week for me. I mean, most people probably didn't know what it was, but I was one of the few people in the UK who arguably knew what that was. Just thought I'd share that with everybody. Yeah, in the spirit of Belgian football getting some mainstream attention. Go and check that out on iPlayer if you've got access to that, everybody. Back to the actual football. I mean, Club Bruges march on, really. That's the story of this, despite, I think it was, six or seven changes that Nicky Ian made. Club, of course, unbeaten in 18 now across all competitions, going all the way back to the Milan fixture in early October. A couple of other stats from their perspective, which are pretty impressive. 11 home wins in a row for them now, and 11 games in a row where they've scored at least 2 goals as well. So, they don't have too much to complain about, which Nicky Hine, to be fair to him, did highlight this week. He said, I just want the guys to go out against Juventus, which they're just about to do, as Ben was saying, as we record, kind of reward themselves and secure more Champions League football. It's all rosy in their garden at the moment, really. They don't have too much to complain about. It's ticking along nicely, and even some of the criticisms that we've been kind of, for what feels like ages, been laying at their door have receded into the distance somewhat. On Beershot, despite an improvement over the last 2 or 3 weeks in terms of what they've been contributing offensively on the park and creating a little bit more, only 1 win in their last 11, and the reality is that chasm is, bigger and deeper than ever.
Yeah, and well, indeed, they did not play bad, and arguably they should have scored even before as well, and then should have been in the game a bit longer. Now, instead of fighting back, if they would fight back, that must have been even until an equalizer. Then because also Sahafi missed the sitter, for example, as well. But yeah, just not efficient enough. Still, same story. And as other sides, and unfortunately for them, their defense is not good enough to compensate that either. So, like, for example, Al Zahafi, that chance on 2 for the 2-1 was like a minute before. In the end, the 3-0 fell. game could have ended differently there, of course. And Corsia, yeah, he made a goal eventually, but his dribble at the 4-2 is very questionable, to say the very least. Start dribbling in your own box and, well, kind of not even giving full effort and just losing the ball. And yeah, it didn't matter much anymore, of course. It was, anyway, literally the final second of the game, I think. But yeah, that's that. And that against the Club Brugge side, of course, that the caveat as well, of course, for that, with a lot of rotation, much like Genk as well. After their mutual cup game in during the week, where there were a bit more starting 11 players, regular starters there. Scott stole all my stats as well, so I'm not going to repeat them, but they're very impressive for Club since that loss in Milan. Question mark is will it be again an Italian side at the end of that streak as well or not? Let's hope not. I suppose for the sake of the coefficient and just Belgian sides in Europe doing well, at least some of them. But yeah, only thing indeed, I wanted to mention, there's still a bit that issue of being too lax once again. But they got away with it, and okay, I guess indeed as well, they would have won this game most likely. It's not a complete surprise, of course, that they would, but even if the scoreline would have gone differently earlier in the game. But yeah, at that second half specifically, until the 3-0, I guess, was quite bad, and then even more understandable with that big of a margin. But Beerschot actually did quite well. But yeah, that issue is still looming a little bit. They also had it against Westerlo relatively recently still. But there's just so much quality that they actually can cover it. And at times, not in this game, I suppose, but more at times, some luck in the Westerlo game, at least that was the case. But yeah, they get away with it because their squad is so big and qualitative, really strong. So yeah, but yeah, good luck to them in Europe this week. And in that cup game, maybe to also finish that up as a completely they did win in the end, the 2-1 as well. But there's everything to play for in the away game. It's on the 5th of February, I believe, so in 2 weeks' time.
Definitely, and that is just a trophy that they've been missing for a long, long time, is that cup. So I don't know, how much they're going to go for it. It depends, I guess, how these European things go.
It's quite mad. Hans van Ack has won everything, but... Well, and he even has won a cup, but not at Club Brugge. That was even before he went to Club Brugge. That's how long it's been, because of course he's a stalwart. I believe it's now 10, or maybe it's already his 11th season at the club. It's been a while since they won the cup, for sure.
A long time. Long time. I was just looking at Beerschot's upcoming fixtures, and it's not pretty. Union, Genk, Charleroi, who are in pretty good form. A Gent side that might be better by then. Dender, they play at the end of February. And then they have a decent kind of running of it. Mechelen, St. Truiden and Westerlo after that. But as you just don't know what situation they're going to be in after these next couple of games, they could be completely dead and buried. We shall see. Another side that might be dead and buried by then as well, of course, they didn't play... I would say they didn't play badly against Anderlecht, but they kind of were just... There's a lot of I was watching, I was they're kind of huffing and puffing, they're putting a lot of energy, they're putting a lot of effort in, but it's not really going anywhere. Scott, you messaged us in the group to say that they've actually had more shots on target when you looked at the stats quickly. And I remembered the shot because it was basically a pass back from Ambrose to Koosman's. He'd done really well until the final finish. And he played all right, actually, Ambrose. He was busy. He was kind of trying to make things happen, but they just didn't really have anything to make happen. And it's interesting because I was watching this and I was like, the midfield suddenly looks a little bit better, though, with Kalimu and Imran Ichel in there. That's seems to they've definitely upgraded in that position. But it's not necessarily a position they needed to upgrade in. It's the top end that needed to be upgraded. And I think João Silva getting sent off kind of, to me, summed up, because I think at the back end of last year, under Alex Anderson, he was one of their best players. He was fantastic at the back, a real leader. And this year, I think he's just been a bit more of what we saw at the beginning of last season. He's just not looked great. And yeah, he again gets sent off. Hazard scores the free kick. Huerta then comes off the bench to score his first goal for Anderlecht. They probably could have scored a lot more. I don't think they necessarily played that well. And it was kind of a similar not as dramatically, but a similar thing. When I said about, I looked at the Gent starting lineup, I saw good Johnson and was like, I don't know how they're going to score. I looked at Anderlecht's kind of front line. I was like, Hazard coming back from injury, Vasquez, who I just don't really rate at all, to be honest. I don't think he's got the quality that's kind of going to lead the line in the game. I think he's fine coming off the bench potentially, but apart from that, and again, he didn't really do anything in this game that made me change my opinion of him. But hey, they get the win. They'll be quite happy with that. Kortrijk, it's just, another defeat, and one I guess they could presume was going to happen, but then they've got Club Brugge coming up next as well, so that'll probably be another defeat before they have Westerlo, which I think by then it's going to be a must-win game, isn't it, Scott? I can't imagine that they're going to go into that without having to get 3 points just to keep in touch with everyone else, because they are starting to get a little bit cut adrift, and I haven't seen any rumours linking them with a striker, which is quite concerning, because you think maybe there'd be someone out there that they could try and get. What's Avenatti doing these days? Like, surely he's available. He's always available. Or maybe they should have got Slimani or someone like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, just try and find anyone. And we don't know if they're clearly probably trying, but the fact that we haven't heard any concrete rumours of them being linked with one is a little bit concerning.
Yeah, well, they seem to be able to sign players in most positions that aren't the most important one. I mean, like you say, these things aren't often as simple as they appear to be, but it makes things from the outside look even bizarre. I mean, I think on an operational level, there are so many questions around Kortrijk as a club. We could do a separate pod on that there's absolutely no doubt about that. I mean, bringing this back to Van der Rijga for a minute, 1 point from 12 since he's come in, and the bottom line is no impact whatsoever from the managerial change. You hope when you make the change you get a bounce, and you also hope that there's a plan of some kind that the two might come together. That's always the theory. I don't think there was a plan, and we haven't seen a bounce. It's kind of unfortunate that they chose to dispatch a manager who, despite obviously his relationship, Frere Alexander, of course, despite his relationship with the fan base starting to fray quite noticeably in some areas, I think there was something about his personality, I think, that was worth sticking with. And I felt at the time, I can understand how, some people have turned a bit, but I think changing here, unless there's a really clear direction, is as big a risk as it gets. But I suppose when you're in a hole as deep as this, sometimes you look at it and you go, well, let's just roll the dice, because it can't really get much worse. So that tells me, there's a lot of chaotic thinking going on, at an operational level and definitely on a sporting level. I mean, lots of negativity from Van der Rijga again. A lot of moaning about the red card. You're going to focus on these things. From an Anderlecht perspective, a win without being massively convincing. I think they did deserve to win over the piece, but you weren't impressed particularly. Hazard's goal, lovely goal, fantastic to see him back. Actually, obviously, such a terrible injury. I think 8 months out. First start in, forever as well as a result of that. And just, fingers crossed for him and for Anderlecht he can stay fit, because he's exactly the sort of player who can contribute for them. Debut goal for Huerta as well, who celebrated by taking some selfies with fan phones with away supporters after the game as well. He seems delighted, by the way, by his transfer, talking up his ambitions about coming to play European football for a long time, and how he feels he's chosen kind of quite wisely. Looking forward to seeing more of him. Actually, he looks from the outside like he's going to be a bit of a personality, and I did wonder just briefly. I thought this could be quite a good thing for that dressing room.
Yep, I'll get to that as well. But first, I'll talk about I'll answer the main question. Then asked, Avenatti is now playing at Peñarol in the Uruguayan First Division. Six games he's played, scored 1 goal, and I also found out that his last name, his second last name is Dovia Bicus, which is a funny, fact next to anything else. It's a very long name if you combine them, of course. Avenatti, Dovia Bicus. Yeah. catchy.
Yeah,
But
it's amazing. It's amazing the knowledge that the three of us carry around in these data bank heads of ours. You'd be surprised.
yeah, we never Google anything or either, of course.
What's that? What's Google?
Yeah, in Scotland that might not have arrived yet. That's also true, but yeah, no, Kortrijk, as I mentioned, the worst sides of the moment. Yeah, like arguably, yeah, it's even reflected in the points, probably by not a big margin, but where with Beerschot doing even better, and I also feel more confident somehow in Beerschot lately than in Kortrijk. Yeah, yeah. Eli Meta and Derman being added to the squad, they are good pickups, but well, that's definitely, yeah, I mean, not the key areas they should have been focused on. And yeah, on Anderlecht, yeah, they won finally again, of course, after 3 consecutive losses in the league. It's definitely something they needed. They did get a 1-0 victory over the line as well in the cup in the other semi-final against Antwerp, but also there everything is still to play for. Hazard, yeah, you mentioned it, but first start of the season, first goal of the season as well, could have been easily prevented if someone off the wall of Kortrijk would have jumped, or Pirar would have dived better. I guess both these were good options, but it didn't happen. Yeah, and ultimately it was just a terrible game. Silva's red card as well again. Very stupid. He picked up his first yellow actually at that free kick for the first Anderlecht goal, and just a few minutes later he comes in high with his stats on Anderlecht's half, so even in a more attacking position. Yeah, just a very ridiculous red card to get. And yet another mistake. He's their captain as well, somehow. Yeah, and maybe that's not necessarily the best for him either. Maybe he's trying to prove it himself a bit too much and gets even more physical to give an example for the rest of the squad. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, he's not having the best of seasons anyways. And yeah, Huerta scoring on his debut, and his first action actually was a Rabona as well. So that's well, the end of his first action was a Rabona. So that's yeah, promising. But there's so much hype around this player. It's like he's still, yeah, I'm already tired of it, and like I'm sorry for him because he can't do anything about it. But like also in Mexico, it was on ESPN Mexico, the game, even the game Kortrijk Anderlecht was on ESPN Mexico. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that would have happened without that man being there. That's one thing, and also like even the newspapers the day after, even on the front page, I think probably more like a sports newspaper anyway, but still, we're reporting about it on the cover of the paper. And apparently also the whole social media of Anderlecht is now full of Mexicans as well, of course. But he looks actually like a nice guy. He's always smiling. So that's the nice personality. But and it shows how big he actually seems to have been in Mexico already. And yeah, it will be interesting to see how we will go fare in Anderlecht first, and maybe more rest of Europe later. Well, maybe with Anderlecht even still in Europe, of course, even later this season. Yeah, that's yeah, a good start anyway. Off to a good start.
Yeah, can't beat a debut goal and a debut Rabona. I mean, you put those two things together, and no, you raised an interesting point in my head, Joris, there about saying that the game was on the ESPN Mexico, and I was like, yeah, no. To be fair, I'm trying to think of Mexican players in Europe at the moment, like the big, like when I was growing up, there were so many really high quality Mexican players, and for me, like Mexican players have always had like a high kind of reputation. I've just gone and looked at the national team at the moment. Everyone is playing in the Mexican league. There's no one playing abroad in Europe or anything like that. And yeah, it's just really interesting that kind of what's happening there.
It seems to be a topic. I think it's actually even historically a bit like that. It's like they go to Europe. Like actually, at Genk we also had Arteaga as well, who also went back even after Genk. That seems to be the case often that they move back there. Well, they can. I think they actually can earn quite a lot there as well, which makes it already less interesting maybe to move. But yeah, also I guess it's far and all, and yeah, that. But while we're on Anderlecht and transfers as well, of course, that's not the only business they've done. They brought in Adrielson, who was already starting against Kortrijk and even against Antwerp already, I believe, in the cup. So he's already featuring Brazilian center back. They definitely needed that. And then just now they also announced another player that I, unfortunately for him, already hate for what will happen with his name. That has nothing to do with himself or the qualities, but I probably you have to pronounce it a little differently, but the Danish center back. Supposedly Adrielson is more like a bit type like Simic, so more like the robust defender and going for duels. And Hey is supposed to be a bit more like the ball playing defender. Definitely an area where they needed to improve, but even with those signings and Huerta, and also that they also had the signing, but I'm not sure if he's going to be featuring very soon in the first squad as well. But of Enzo Sternau, a really big French talent, which is quite a coup that they were able to get him from Marseille. Interesting to see if he can make, he can live up to the praises that he already has. But still, regardless of that, a lot of business, but still that hanging question mark over the midfield for me at the moment. Central midfield. Plus, currently we're also seeing it again. There were so many things to go do with that squad actually, but they're doing a lot of the things. So let's see if they actually in the last 10 days now can actually figure everything out. But like we also see now with Dolberg being out. Yeah, what we kind of suspected, I guess, by as well. But like Vasquez is not a good stand-in, not a stand-in they need, I think, as well. So they might need for me, they still need a striker and a central midfielder, I guess, a defensive central midfielder, someone with power, which in theory they actually have, but. Yeah, these players are already written off as well. I think internally in the Diawara, to name at least one, was now featuring with the futures lately.
Yeah, and you think with a lot of clubs away, and yeah, just jumping back at that Mexican thing, it reminds me very much of South Africa, where you can earn more money back at home, and you look at some of the clubs in Mexico, like they're so big, like it's kind of not worth leaving those massive sides. And
also, I'm still waiting for my commission. I went to Mexico not that long ago, and now there's all this hype. I feel personally completely responsible. I'll take all responsibility for this.
And then you mentioned Adrielson. I watched the game, and there was a couple of moments I was like, oh, I'm not sure about this guy. There's one where like the ball like bounced in front of him, and he just had to like hack it clear, and he kind of like just fell over, and I was just like, I don't know.
Arguably still better than Zanka though.
Yeah, but that's not difficult. I reckon there's quite easy upgrades that you could have done in that position. Anyway, let's get to another team. This team like giving away penalties, and they also had a player sent off. That was Leuven losing 1-0 to Union. And safe to say that the new manager bounce, you mentioned it, Scott, with Yves van der Hart, that's not really happened at Leuven. That's only one win in the last 5, I think it is, in all competitions. It started reasonably well with a couple of results, but then a loss to Cercle Bruges. Cercle playing quite well at the moment, to be fair. They beat Beerschot, and then, yes, they lost to Club Genk and Union. They haven't scored, I think, is the bigger concern. Like, you can lose to these sides in the position they're in, but they could really do with finding the back of the net. We had a debut for Loni Lequincio Zifuik. Joris can definitely correct my pronunciation of that one when we get to him giving a thing. See, that just sounds too much like swearing to me, so I don't feel like I can do that. But yeah, he didn't really have much to write home about. Interesting that Banzuzi played again. He was back in. There was lots of that links with him going to Monaco, but he kind of jumped back in. But yeah, I think Coleman's probably quickly realised that this job is going to be a lot more difficult than he might have anticipated beforehand. And I know he wants them to make some signings quite quickly, which, yeah, they're kind of like called trike, aren't they, though, in the sense that they might go and make a load of signings, but they could make them all in the wrong positions, which is classic Leuven every kind of year, really. Whereas for Union, nice to get a win, I guess, against a side they'd expect to win, even if it was only 1-0. keeps them in, puts them into that third spot. They're still in with a shout of a title, obviously, with the way the points halving and all that sort of goes. So I don't think we should completely discount them from that because, I just have a sneaky feeling that they're going to do what's been done to them over so many years. But Leuven, it's getting a little bit more concerning every single week. They're just lucky that everyone else around them is losing at the same time.
Yeah, well, Chris Coleman coming to Belgium, I think it's a case of we're going to see how good you really are now. All those people who say, well, it's the Belgian league, it's Belgium and all of that. Well, right back at the lot of you because, there's plenty of coaches with, that come with a certain pedigree and a certain name. And you can argue about whether Chris Coleman's actually in that category or not, but this is going to test him in a way that he hasn't been tested before. I think, Ben was talking about manager bounces. There has been an improvement, I think, but you couldn't be as generous as describing it as a bounce at all. It's maybe raising up on your the top of your toes and then dropping back down again. Because there has been a minor improvement, but not anything tangible as such. I was looking at some of the numbers behind this in relation to kind of Garcia today, and on the whole, there definitely has been a slight improvement. Interestingly, last week, as me and Joris were talking about, Chris Coleman talking a lot about needing to make better choices at key points in games. That is absolutely them in a nutshell at the moment. I think if they can do that, then you will start to see some kind of tangible improvements. So there are some signs there that they are doing the right things, I think. Joris I'll pick out some more stats now, I'm sure, in a second. On Union, Ben's right, up to third now. Definitely still part of the big conversation. There's no doubt about it. It's worth highlighting that again. Don't forget about them because they are 13 now without defeat in the league, and that patience that they've stuck with Pochignoli, they're now being rewarded for that. The players, I think, as I was saying last week, have now settled, seem to have a better understanding of one another, and they are starting to click and get results. And defensively as well, to be fair to Union, we should point out to everybody, best defence in the league. Only 19 conceded, and that's a pretty good platform on which to start from, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. And again, one of my notes as well. But this was also the Lezen derby, of course, and one of them unfortunately took the key role there. Well, half unfortunately, I guess. Like one, he made a mistake for the penalty. Clearly, Tobel while trying to play out a bit too calmly and not realizing Promise David was actually there, and that was cost a penalty that eventually won Union the game. But on the other hand, he probably was still man of the match after that as well. That's at least from Leuven's side. That's with an Union who arguably also were not at their best as well. A bit of a sober victory here, but indeed, that defense has clicked a bit more again. Partially, I guess, with Burgess coming back in the fold as well, while he was out in the beginning of the season, things were a bit more in struggles. I think that might even not have to do that necessarily that much with the quality of the player, but more like the communication improving and so on there as well. Also encouraging for Union is, of course, that their next games all look very winnable. The 4 upcoming games are against the bottom 3 in Mechelen in a form which is equal to those sides. So that's good omen for Union for the next month or so for sure. And like Scott mentioned, their unbeaten streak keeps on continuing. And they'll adding to that as well. Apart from that, it was also still the first time they won 3 consecutive league games this season in a row. Despite that long streak, that's a good milestone, and they might want to be. And it looks like on paper they should be able to build on that and make that streak a lot longer as well in the upcoming weeks.
Hopefully they can do that in Europe as well when they face Braga. Massive Europa League game. For them, they've really turned things around in that competition as well, and they're not too far off Scott's favourite Scottish side in getting into the top 8 in the Europa League. win would put them level with one half of Glasgow, that's for sure. Joris, you had something else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, like, also, like, in 2025, Leuven are really in a gifting mood still. Holiday season is over, but like they conceded 4 penalties in the 3 games they played, the 1 cup game, and well, now the 2 league games. The last 3 goals they conceded were all penalties as well, of course.
How generous of them. What a lovely bunch. St Jude were feeling pretty generous this weekend. They realised that Port Stanley Liège have not scored 2 goals since they played St Jude back in November. So they were like, you know what, you can have another 2. Eckhart and Zakiri scoring in this one after Agawa, of all people, scored the opening goal. Maybe it's kind of ironic, isn't it? They signed Euclid to get some competition at left back, and Agawa suddenly starts scoring goals. Kind of ironic. Lamkauzi's the side's vocal leader now. Is that a good or a bad thing? It's kind of being reported as a good thing, but I don't know if it is a good thing. You know what I mean? But it does maybe show some maturity from him, which is quite an interesting kind of thing. And hey, if he's changed, he's changed. We've got to kind of give him credit if that is the case. It definitely wasn't. His debut last week was a lot better than his performance in this game. I thought he was quite non-existent in this one, unfortunately for him. Since Jude had so many kind of chances to get something out of this game, and they didn't. And one of the highlight for me, and because I kind of wondered, obviously Andreas Huntoji, the Benin striker coming in from Burnley, big money outlay from Burnley last summer, didn't do anything there really, so he's come on loan to Standard. I was like, I wonder like what he's going to be like. The first thing I saw him do was they were on the counter attack, and he was in the middle of the pitch, and his touch was so bad it went out for a throw in on the opposite side. It was horrendous, and he just looked down at the pitch. I was like, that's not the pitch, mate. That's just one of the worst bits of football I've seen. And I'm sure if there are any Burnley fans listening, they're probably like, yeah, that's what we've been watching for the last couple of months. So yeah, he's got some ways to go in my estimations to prove that he's been a decent signing. Whereas the second goal, I think Eckhart's goal, that would really frustrate me if I was Felice Mazu, because he should either be offside because you've stepped the line up, or one of you should be near him to be able to stop him, because Kokobu, there's nothing he can do at that point. The ball's obviously hit the post and he's on the floor. He hasn't really got much choice. But yeah, they had their chances, St Truden, and they still... Players make bad decisions at wrong points within the final third, and that's been their Achilles heel for most of this season. That they've got a guy that can score goals if you get him the ball often enough, and they don't get him the ball often enough. Like, he needs a couple of chances to score, does Bertuccini. I think it's not kind of rocket science to realise that when you watch him play, he will miss chances. So you've just got to keep supplying him. But Brahimi clearly doesn't like passing to him, so that's going to be one of their problems, and that's something I'm going to keep bringing up. But somehow, after all of that, Standard as 7th, and I don't know about you guys, but I watched this game thinking this feels like a game between 2 sides in the bottom 4. Like, this is what this game, the quality of this game feels like. But one of these sides is a point away from the top 6. It just makes no sense.
Yeah, it was a weird one in some respects, this game. Felix Mazu was very frustrated afterwards. You know, he was speaking about the mistakes and talking about, you know, we had the chances to win this game. As was Bruno Godot, actually. You know, he said pretty much the same thing. He says, we probably should have won this game. It was the mistakes that killed us. And it's a bit like the Mechelen-Ghent game in the sense that it was the transitions that killed St Truden. They were the mistakes. They left space that, you know, you just shouldn't be doing at that level. Standard, actually, to be fair to them, taking full advantage of that. So, you know, the efficiency, there you go. There's this week's mention of efficiency. Might be the second, maybe the first, but it's always in there every week somewhere. It's inevitable. Quite impressive in that sense. Also, the first time Standard winning back to back as well, which is, you know, pretty remarkable if you think about it too. Just want to doff my hat to Ivan Leko, really. I did that a little bit last week, but, you know, just another chance to do it. All things considered, I mean, to get them in the position that they're in with what he's working with is truly remarkable. A few people have been talking about that this week, and there's obviously something about his personality and this sense of kind of grit that comes from him that he's instilling in this squad a little bit, to get those small details that often decide games are rubbing off on the players sometimes. And you just wonder where this particular squad of players would maybe be under a different coach. So although I've said a lot, he's probably the right coach at the wrong time for the club. Maybe he is the right coach at the right time, and there is other aspects to his personality that those who've never experienced working with him haven't seen firsthand until now. And I think there's a lot of that going on here. I think they know there's been a little bit of talk this week about some people getting a little bit excited about a playoff one push, despite everything. I think that's the sort of thing that should get you carted off in a white van still. They're getting results, where they need them, but there's a huge gap between being a little bit complimentary to them, which I feel like I have to do because I'm a kind of desperate. I've said this a few times as well over a number of years now. I'm desperate to say something nice about Standard and for it actually to lock in and become a thing rather than be a flash in the pan. But yeah, don't be imagining Standard are going to finish in playoff one, because I'll be the one calling for the men in white coats for you.
Yeah, one that, and two, as a neutral, would you want them there as well? It's not that they're playing a very exciting brand of football at the moment, which is understandable, of course, and indeed, their situation is the right thing to do, but I don't necessarily want that. Also, well, another argument for that, I'll also give a counter argument straight away after it, but they still play the whole top 5 as well in these next 8 games. That could hamper their chances. My own counter argument against myself here is, of course, they tend to play quite well against or get pickup points against the bigger sides as well, exactly because of the playing style a bit as well. But okay, that would still be very weird. That would be the situation where they need to get more points out. They might pick up a few points and take some points from some of these top clubs, but probably not enough for really make a big push to get closer to some of those. I don't know the exact placement of those games though, so that could play in their favor somehow as well. That maybe they already end up in overtaking one of the sides that they're playing against. But definitely a good win nonetheless. Second away win of the season only. And 1 point of top 6. Ridiculous, to be honest. First time that they would get 2 consecutive wins, not only this season, but also in the last 1.5 year already. So that must have been the beginning of last season that would happen the last time. And this is a very specific stat, so I'm not sure if it's really worth mentioning, but still, it's the first time in 4.5 years, apparently, that they turned around an away game to get the wins. So specifically the away game, of course, they have turned it around at Klesme for sure. But Sint-Truiden, that's now 5 points after the last 8 games. That win against Westerlo last week really did them well, but now it looks one that might not have been completely deserved win even, and they're still very much in danger. So they will need to have a miracle of Lamkel Zee there, I guess, happening, and haven't won at home since the 8th of November as well, which is starting to count as well, as starting to get a lot. 2.5 months now. So and last thing on Standard again, some things come with the price as well. That was even an inadvertent pun, and I didn't want to make this pun, but price might be on the way out. To West Brom, of course. It's not been super impressive necessarily this season, but they just can't afford to lose many players in general anyway. And he's still a regular in that squad, so we'll have to see how they react on that as well.
Yeah, it looks like a deal for around about €2 million, I think it was, which, it's better than nothing. They got one for free, so not the end of the world, like you said, but not really afford to keep losing players if they can't replace them. Mentioned Westerlo, let's get on to them. We were speaking about them today, about how it's quite hilarious that they only seem to sign players who are really young or really old. Like, there's no kind of in between. If you're probably between the ages of 28 to 32, you're not getting a look in at Westerlo. So that kind of puts me out of it, puts Joris out of it. Scott, you've probably still got a chance, mate, I reckon. With you being a fresh-faced 21-year-old, I reckon you've definitely got a chance of getting in there.
Yeah, I might get a game for the Westerlo geriatric squad.
They'd put a decent team together at this rate. New man in goal, Andreas Ljungdahl. Didn't have much of a say in the winning penalty. There's nothing he could do about that. One of the funniest things ever, like, because I saw them get it. I was like, Janssen and Alderweireld, like, which one's going to step up? And I was like, Dumby is stepping up. Like, what? And I wasn't the only one that thought that, because Jonas de Rock just turned around and looked away. And I was like, imagine that. Like, you're about to take a penalty to win the game for your side, and you look over at your manager and he's facing the stands. You'd be like, oh, cheers. Like, vote of confidence in me. But honestly, that was one of the best penalties I've ever seen. He absolutely smashed it into the top bins. I think I said to you guys, it was either going top bins or it was going out the stand. Like, there was no way, like, the amount of power he put behind that was going anywhere else. There's obviously Slimani in there at the moment. Saw some rumours linking Frigan with a move to Sunderland, and one of the more hilarious purchase options, if Sunderland get promoted, which isn't a bit I find hilarious, like they could get promoted, but they'd spend 15 million euros on him. And I was like, he had like a little bit of a good run, didn't he, earlier in the season? But there's no way in hell that his value should have doubled since joining Westerlo. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is no way he's got that much better to justify that price tag, which is just obscene, I think we could say. But a few bright spots for them. Obviously, Griffin Yao coming back into some form. He's starting to play quite well over the last couple of weeks, which I think is quite good. So he's now been linked with a move away as well, which they'd rather not have happen, but I'm not sure. I guess a couple of MLS teams are interested. And a shout out to Alfie Devine, because he almost scored one of the goals of the weekend for me. Really great kind of solo run and dribble. Looked like his shot was going in, but Senna Lammens with a fantastic save. Really, really quick kind of reflex reaction from him. Antwerp obviously put behind that loss to Anderlecht in the Cup. And a couple of poor performances as well, either side of that 5-1 win over Union that they had in the Cup. But kind of getting back on track against a team that you just know Duroc was desperate to win this one against Westerlo. They managed to do that. Westerlo, starting to, they're obviously now in the bottom four as well, on a really bad run. They're talking about they're performing well but not getting the results. And it's like, well, what's the point at the end? Like, you could get relegated if you're not getting the points. You could play really, really well, but if you're not winning, are you playing well? I think that's kind of one thing you could say.
I think that's the thing with Westerlo, isn't it? And that's the important thing. You know, we've been very complimentary towards them for pretty much all season up to this point. Played a lot of good football. Still playing a lot of good football. We're very good in the first half this week. Really, really good. Antwerp just kind of rolled them over by stepping the game up a little bit, and they just need to stop that thing of kind of falling out of games, Westerlo. The bottom line with things with them are, and Timmy Simon said it post-match, he said, the boys are working really hard, they're doing most things right, he says, but you have to convert these performances into points. And it actually comes down to quite a simple game management thing as well, and not allowing yourself to fall out of games. They just didn't compete well enough at the basic things really in the second half. On the winning penalty, on that specifically, it's quite interesting because I thought that was so soft really. I was quite disappointed to see that given in lots of ways. But yeah, De Rock not watching the penalty was moment of the weekend for me. Made me laugh kind of quite a lot, that, especially when the full details of the story came out afterwards. Isn't it interesting that, senior players on the pitch always have responsibility making these decisions? Clubs have lists. Here's our list of penalty takers, but we're going to ask someone who isn't on the list to take it. Not only that, we're going to ask somebody to take it who has a reputation in the squad for being pretty poor at penalties, even when he does take them in training. But yeah, that nerve-jangling ending to the game, and as Ben was saying, De Rock will have been desperate to win that for some personal reasons. But yeah, for Westerlo, they simply have to start picking up some points now. 5 defeats in their last 6, and they're starting really to get themselves into trouble, regardless of how well they're playing. Nobody cares unless you take some points.
Another side, much like Leuven, that are still in holiday season with gifting away a crucial penalty here and before against Club Brugge as well, throwing away at least 2 points. It would not have brought them that much in the classification, even though it might be coming down to that at the end of the league as well, the regular season. But yeah, mainly it would have given them the much needed boost in confidence to get some points away from home against those sides. But they managed to not do that. The last against Club Brugge, there even was the initial save. At least they were, and then the rebound only got in. At least they were spared from that here. But it was indeed either that or tried to find the ball somewhere in the parking of the stadium, if it was at that side of the stadium. But but they really were playing well. But they're really missing so many chances. 8 shots on target in the first half, only converting 2, of which one was actually also again a very similar penalty, how it was kicked as well. A bit more safety in there maybe, but the place where it ended up at least was in there, was very similar from Yao compared to Doumbia. Notable points of note for them, Ljungdahl straight in goal as well. They did get a goalkeeper. They did need that. Unfortunately, quite a sour start for him now because of this losing in the last minute thingy that they seem to be doing now. And that's quite it's quite bad that they are indeed not taking points. They're still creating a lot, but not converting enough, even though they still, they scored 2 goals, and in Bruges they even scored 3. So it's not that they're not converting anything. In many games it could be enough, but unfortunately, at least against the top sides, it seems that they are leaking goals this season. And Antwerp, on the other hand, had a really terrible first half. There were a lot of whistles also at halftime. The hour between halftime and like final whistle must have changed a few things there, because quite different after second half final whistle. But they only got an expected goals of 0.15 in that first half, and that's including that, arguably was a brilliant goal of Janssen, of course, that brought them ahead. But also, Alderweireld scoring 3 goals. Well, technically it's an own goal from Divine, I guess, but 3 goals against Westerlo this season, so that's worthy, at least, whether we count it or not. At least he played a role in this goal. I think technically he should get that one, given it was going goalwards, but was goal bound. But okay. Last week I mentioned the statistics of Lammens on penalties. This time he couldn't save it, but it also did not matter as much. In the end, it could have gone completely differently, but his stats dropped dramatically this week.
Poor Lammens. No, you mentioned how bad Veslo, excuse me, have been against the top sides. Thankfully for them, they only played 2 of the top 6 to round off the season. They've got Genk, I believe, next week, and then they get Anderlecht second to last game. The rest of the games are all winnable for them. So maybe if they do keep up these performances, they feel like they probably should get the wins that they need. And maybe that explains why they're trying to sign lots of experienced heads who can kind of help them through this kind of back end. But then it's like, why do you keep going with the same formula every kind of, like last season, you went with this really young team and it backfired and you had to bring in experience. Like, why not just blend it in the summer and you won't have to deal with this issue? But I'm sure they'll do exactly the same this summer if they remain in the top flight. Before we get to the Challenger, Scott, I know you've got something burning on your brain that you want to get off your chest. Obviously, new Belgian Red Devils head coach. You are kind of the resident fan outside of Joris of the national team, out of the 2 of us non-Belgians here. So over to you. I know you've got a couple of names you want to spitball with us quickly before they eventually make a decision. Then we'll do your usual deep dive into the new head coach and kind of what people can expect from whoever this man might be. They might not even be one of the many names that you're about to kind of chuck at us, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we will indeed. Well, we know that Dominic Tedesco's gone now. That long, slow, lingering death that it felt like finally reached its conclusion over the last few days. He is now gone. played 24, won 12, drawn 6, lost 6. Not a great record. Not a great deal of faith in him across a number of departments. So the collaboration has ended. I thought we might have a bit of fun with it this week. Instead of going into too much detail about some of the candidates, I'm going to fire the names of all of the coaches who've been mentioned in connection with this, including some who have been spoken to and are certainly on that shortlist. And I simply want a yes, no, or maybe from you guys to I suppose, keep people in the picture. So in no particular order, we'll alternate between Ben and Joris. So Mark van Bommel, Ben.
Nah, definitely not.
Joris, Mark van Bommel.
Yes.
Eric Ten Hag.
Yeah, go on then. Or I'll give it a maybe. That could be quite funny.
Joris?
No.
Rudy Garcia.
Maybe.
No. Also, I refuse to put in any maybes anyway, though. I'll limit myself even more.
Michel Prudhomme.
Nah, it's been too long.
Yeah, no.
Another familiar face, Hein van Heisenbroek.
Absolutely. Give it to him now. Let him sign. Let him put a number down whatever he wants.
Absolutely not. He wanted to put Mertens in front of Hazard before the World Cup 2018. I mean, someone who says those things, just no. Worst nightmare.
Another very familiar face, Philippe Clement.
Part of me thinks yes, because I like him. But yeah, I'll say yes for that one because I've already said maybes for too many.
Yeah, I could live with that.
Okay. Caro Guirers.
No, I don't think he's experienced enough.
No.
Thierry Henry.
Absolutely not. Definitely not.
I agree.
Louis van Gaal.
Yes. Yeah, love it.
Bring it. We all want it. But I'm not sure if it's for the sportive merits, because I guess he's also been out for too long, maybe.
No, he's definitely the most elite coach on that list, though, isn't he?
Yeah, he's definitely one of the most interesting ones. Another couple just to round it off, Wouter Franken.
Definitely not. How's that name got on the list?
That's 2 no's there. And last but by no means least, probably the front runner at the moment for a number of reasons, Julien Lopetegui.
No, because I want Van Gaal. No, you said his name.
No, also no.
There you go. Everyone's in the picture now with all the candidates.
It's such like it's interesting because you lots of those names in a vacuum, you'd be like they're really good coaches, but then you're thinking of a national team that has also like a linguistic dynamic and all this sort of stuff. So you're managing a lot more than just a national team. Like it's not like like the England thing where everyone's going to speak English, and you're managing like club football egos and stuff like that. Like that's what you got to be good at. But yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, all jokes aside, I think Van Gaal to me is probably the most elite coach on there. But it's also like, is he what you need at this moment in time with the squad that you've got? Do you know what I mean? Like, he's very good at setting things up for the future. We know that that's what he's really good at, and that could be a good thing to set up for someone else. But then, who is the someone else? And the Thierry Henry one's just the funniest one, isn't it to me? Because we all know where that's come from. Like he's got mates in the thing, and it's just like, what planet? I don't know. I know you, Scott, you didn't want to speak too much detail into it, but I saw that one. I was like, what planet is he the best qualified candidate for the Belgian national team job?
Yeah, also with his past there already, it would probably be regressing to Martinez style tactics, which, I mean, it can work, but I'm not sure if his own merits have not really shown that he can necessarily add something to that as well. But so for me, as you could probably hear from my answers, Van Bommel is probably a right candidate as well. Like he has the allure as a player, of course. So to get the whole dressing room, well, at least get some respect still from that part. Yeah, as a manager in Belgium, at least he did well. The main thing Ben mentioned there is, of course, I doubt that he speaks a lot of French. So that could be an argument against it, if it's to be a foreigner. But okay, same can still be said for Van Gaal, of course, as well. So that's again, if it's just between those two, it's not really an argument. But yeah, but in Belgium, and at least he has some connection with Belgium and the league. Not that it needs to be there, of course, but yeah, it's often the case with these foreign names that you actually don't know, like how much do they actually know already, basically. And yeah, okay. Like I said, like ideally, actually, maybe despite our own nice coverage about it, the whole most of the squad still doesn't come from inside the league. That would be a good sign for the national side. But of the league, but not only of the league, but indeed of living in Belgium and the Belgian ways of things as well. So yeah, that's why. And apart from that, I mean, there's no perfect candidate. I also have to admit that. So it's not that it would be my first pick necessarily out of all possible candidates, but yeah.
Yeah, there's some really interesting candidates in there. I mean, I think on the Lopetegui one, since he's been very hot over the last few days, he speaks English and he hasn't managed in Belgium. I think both those things are quite a big advantage for a candidate. Martinez has kind of proved that, so I wouldn't be surprised if that was kind of quite a big factor in the end. He also does have a lot of good experience of working with young players, very successful, of course, with the younger Spanish national sides too, which obviously is very attractive. So there's a lot to recommend, I suppose, in his potential appointment, and we will see whether this time next week whether there is any white smoke emanating from the FA or not.
Yes, and when that happens, yeah, like we said, we'll definitely do a deep dive. But any of those names, if you're listening, that you think, you're all wrong, this guy would be great, let us know. I'm really interested to hear kind of who people think. I know a lot of Rangers fans were suggesting Philippe Clement, which I presume was slightly tongue-in-cheek because they want someone else to manage their own club, which was quite funny. Before we go, obviously, we can't ignore the second tier. Scott, over to you for a quick roundup of what's been going on there. Obviously, Patro lost their main striker. Didn't seem to really affect them, though, this week, did it?
No, it didn't affect them at all. As we reach match day 18 in the CPL, Patro 4, Lokeren 1, Eupen 0, Molenbeek 1, Frank Moran 0, Beveren 0, RAL 2, Anderlecht Futures 2, RFC Liège 1, Zulte Waregem 1, Liège 1, Club Next 3, and Yonggenk 2, Sarang 2. So where does that leave us in terms of the bigger picture? Zulte are still top. RAL are still second, although they've lost a little bit of ground. Molenbeek have made up ground because of the way the results worked out this weekend, narrowing the gap slightly. And Yonggenk still in the drop zone. Lowell, interestingly, are still to make a permanent appointment following the departure of Steve Bold for those personal reasons, which we will not be revealing on this podcast. Some personal reasons will stay private for discretionary reasons, and that will remain the case here as well. And interestingly, just in terms of other things that have been going on, Beveren have added a number of names to their squad over the last couple of weeks or so. Guillaume de Schrijver's come in on a free from Denza. Leonard Mertens has come in on a free from Denza after their bankruptcy. Christian Bruels has come in, and Janus van Eyck's not long in the door either. So they're trying to tool up for a serious playoff push, which they're going to need to do, because that is going to be their route back to the top table if they're going to do it this season. But I do feel with bringing in a few faces and being one of the more active sides in this window in the CPL, I think the pressure on Marink Riedijk has gone up just a little bit. There'll be a real expectation now that he can at least get them to that kind of playoff jump-off match, I think. So we'll see what happens there. But it's definitely getting hotter in the CPL now as we get down to the serious business end of the season there.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right about Beveren, Scott. It looks like it's kind of playoff or bust for them this season now. I think they've probably looked around and seen like Eupen obviously a non-factor. Lommel look like they're kind of going to be a non-factor in the playoffs as well. So it's kind of like, actually, if you can make a run for this, like there's definitely a chance in there. Patro, we know what shenanigans they'll probably get up to in the playoffs with probably turning off the hot water and stuff like that. Molenbeek, he just again could easily capitulate. So yeah, good chance to kind of really go for it. But like you said, there's going to be a lot more pressure on them now. Whereas don't want to say it, but it looks like we will be seeing Zulte Waregem again next season back in the top flight. They look like, yeah, everyone else is kind of faffing around and they're kind of just getting on with it at the moment. And they're making some moves as well. They're kind of shifting players in and out as well to kind of tool up to get promoted and then to kind of try and stay in the league when they do get here, because as other sides have shown, it's not that easy. But that probably does it for this week's episode. Went on a little bit longer than expected because we decided to spitball about Louis van Gaal and Erik ten Hag and all that lot coming in for the national team coach, head coach position that is now vacant. But guys, it's been great to be back as a trident. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I have.
Absolutely. Wouldn't have missed it for the world. It's always slightly better as a trident. You know what I mean? We talk about this a lot between ourselves, don't we, guys? It just is. It's an energy thing. Bouncing off three people is much more interesting than two. No offence to myself and Joris last week. Don't know what it's like for you listeners. Do tell us if you feel differently. But yeah, have a great week, whatever you're up to, everybody. And we'll see you again next week.
You betcha. And I do hold Scott accountable for the episodes of with 2 not working well. That's as well as with 3. I just do.
Yeah, maybe don't tell us if you prefer it as a 2, because then you have to tell us which one of us you want to get rid of.
I'll get my code. we
have been working on a transfer in the background for potential emergency loan signings in case of an absence. So that may be happening at some point in the future, hopefully. And the person we've been in conversations with would be a fantastic addition to the podcast. And yeah, my one fear about them making an appearance is that people will probably want them on more often than whoever's missing, which could be quite concerning for the rest of us. But maybe we'll have to then become what's a 4 thing? A square sounds a bit stupid. There's got to be some sort of trident-esque weapon.
A fork.
A fork. Still doesn't sound so great. Anyway, we're just rambling on now. As per usual, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you like it, leave us a review on your podcast app of choice, or you can donate to us to help with the running costs at Buy Me a Coffee, which is linked in all of our socials. Yeah, as always, thank you very much for listening, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.